Welcome to Tapped In with Tony. I'm your host, Tony Bogan, and joining me is a man who knows about Portage County sports left and right. Tom Nader joins us. Tom, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tony. It's great to be here. I really appreciate you thinking of me and asking me to join you. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. You're definitely in the know as far as it comes to Portage County High School sports coverage, and you do a really incredible job with it.
I appreciate it. It's definitely a passion of mine, and it's just been fun to make a career out of something that's a passion. I think a lot of people, whether they're in the media industry or whatever other professional industry they're in, that's really the goal, right? To find something you're passionate about and find something that you can do on a daily basis that doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely. They say that if you really enjoy something, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right. And I think that I'm definitely living in that life, I think, because while there is certainly work involved with getting stuff done and all that kind of stuff, but I get to wake up every day and work in sports, and that's a dream come true for me.
Absolutely. And Tom, for those who are just tuning in for the first time, where are you from and what is your background?
So I grew up in Ritztown, Ohio, and so Portage County my whole life. And I grew up going to an elementary school that was a Catholic school through fifth grade. And then it was located in Ravenna. I went to Immaculate Conception School through fifth grade in Ravenna. And then I transitioned over to Ritztown Middle School and continued through the Ritztown School District until I graduated from Ritztown High School. And then went to Kent State University, where I earned my journalism degree. And initially, when I was a senior in high school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to be when I grew up or what career I wanted to pursue. I always enjoyed science, and I always enjoyed outer space. So I always kind of thought, well, maybe I'll do something with astronomy or something in that realm. And it was actually my senior year of high school, my senior English teacher who presented us with a pretty extensive senior class project to do, and it required us to do anywhere, I think it was like 6 to 8 different writing assignments, and there was some creative writing, there was some poem writing, long story writing. It really challenged us to tap into a lot of different writing styles. And the long story short there is that by the time I was completed with that project and presented it to her, I remember the day in class, she said she was handing all the papers back to everybody, and she handed me mine, and she said, "And Tom, I want to see you after class." And I had always been a good student and followed the rules and everything. So I kind of thought, well, I don't think I'm in trouble, but I'm curious now what she wants. And it was in that conversation after that class, she asked me, she said, "Have you ever considered a career in writing?" And I was honest and told her, no, not really. And she said, "Well, these are really good writings that you turned in for this project. And I know you love sports a lot. You should look into a career in sports writing. It might be a good career path for you." So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And when I began classes at Kent State University, I made the decision to take her advice and pursue a degree in journalism. And I mean, obviously I'm still here doing it. And so she saw something in me before I saw it. And I think most good teachers do that, but she really kind of opened the door for me for a career.
That's amazing, Tom. And imagine if you were into astrology, maybe could have been the next Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about cosmos.
Yeah, who knows where I'd be right now, right? But but in all honesty, I'm super happy with where I am at, and you always wonder, if I would have went down a different career path, would I have always then gravitated back to writing maybe, or realized later on that, wow, that was actually the passion I was meant to be doing all along. You just never know. And by the time I graduated from Kent State University, I had already been writing part-time for the Record Courier for 4 years. And I just kind of stayed on that path. And 2 months after I graduated from Kent State University, a full-time position became available within their sports department. And I jumped on it right away when they offered it to me. And so I spent, a good part of the better part of 22 years working for the Record Courier. Started as a staff writer there, really just kind of general assignment. type of position. They're just kind of taking on any assignment they threw my way. And that kind of transitioned into being the Portage County High School beat writer. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity in 2007 to be promoted to be the sports editor, which is a position I held for 12 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And growing up in Rootstown, and you didn't have to go far for school, and you didn't have to go far to cover games, and that's pretty incredible. As someone who lives not that far from Rootstown, what's one of the go-to spots to eat out there?
Well, that's a good question. I think in Rootstown, it's been mostly fast food restaurants, kind of your normal chains that you would see for the most part. But I would say, I think I would probably say, I mean, there's a pizza place, there's Capoletti's Pizza, which is kind of a go-to spot for most people. But if I'm really being honest, I'd probably go a little bit more north into Ravenna and go to Siciliano's Pizzeria. That place, well, not necessarily in Rootstown, but just 5 minutes away. But their pizza, their stromboli, that's really the place to be in my eyes.
Gotcha. And I also got to plug Sunshine Cupcakes. They're really great.
Oh, yeah.
And especially their two for two on Tuesdays.
Yeah, that's a great deal. You can't beat that.
Absolutely. And getting back to the topic of you doing sports, what was it? How was it like as you were going to school and you were doing part-time assignments for the Record Courier? What were some lessons that you learned as you came up that you eventually applied when you were named the beat writer and then eventually the editor?
Well, it goes back to, I started working when I was like in 8th grade. I went to work with my dad. He kind of grew up as an engineer. And so he had a shop where I could go in there and kind of get my hands dirty a little bit of like factory work and stuff. And I just went in there with the mentality of I just wanted to work hard and just try and catch people's attention. And I remember he told me the one day, he's like, hey, and again, I'm an 8th grade kid at this point. There's no idea that I'm going to become a writer, but it's just funny how things work out, because one of the first days I was working there, he said, hey, go in, keep your head down and work hard. He said, because whatever work you do, you sign your name to that work, which was a lesson of when you leave the job site, they're going to say, either in a good way or a bad way, oh, well, Tom did that job. You kind of silently sign your name to your work. Well, then I became a writer where you literally have a byline where you sign your name to your work. And so to answer your question, I always kind of channeled that little bit of advice that my dad had given me. And I just attacked every single day, no matter what the assignment was. Some people frowned down on some of the smaller assignments. I was super excited to do them. And it was another opportunity to write a fun story. So I just kind of attacked every single day, working as hard as I possibly could, no matter what the story was, because I knew that story that I would be writing was going to be very, very important to whatever family was involved with that particular story. Absolutely. Your audience, the audience for each story is going to vary in size based on the magnitude of what, the news cycle's going on. But you definitely know that at the very least, that family that you're writing about, that's going to be their world. And so I knew that it was my job to try and capture that story as best as possible. And so when I was working part-time and I was going to school full-time, and I was also working in a warehouse at a furniture company in the Akron area at the time too. And so my whole mentality was, all right, well, I'm going to do my classes in the morning. And then I've got to go work in the warehouse at the furniture store and kind of lift, move, do all kind of stuff with furniture for the afternoon. And then the evening time, I'm going to do my job and my work for the Record Courier. So it really was just, what did I learn? I learned time management. I learned how to juggle multiple deadlines across multiple platforms, which at that point was making sure I got my schoolwork done. So there's a deadline that was attached there to get stuff done. I had to go and do my obligations and be held accountable at a professional job, which was the furniture warehouse job. And then all in the meantime, keeping track of deadlines for stories to turn in. So I learned that hard work literally was able to accomplish anything. I mean, there were days, finals weeks, especially at Kent State, where you just felt so overwhelmed that the thought would pop in my head, I've got some vacation time. Maybe I should just file some of that vacation time at the furniture store so I can get some of this stuff done. But then I was like, no, I'm just going to power through it, and always found a way to get it done.
Respect, man, because sometimes when you power through it and at the end of the day, you're happier because it's like, oh, I got this done. It's like you could have just put it off, and then you put it off some more, and then next thing a month later, I'm like, wait, what was I supposed to be doing?
Right. And it proved to me too, it's kind of weird, and like, not to be like over dramatic with it, but it really proved to me then how long you can make a day last. So everybody needs their sleep, and I'm not trying to say like I don't sleep, but it made me realize that, like there's still time in the day from like 10 o'clock to midnight that something can get accomplished. And sometimes your body speaks to you and says, no, you're done. You're going to sleep now. But I just remember then just being like, wow, I can really stretch these days longer than I ever really realized.
Yeah. And I see that with what I do in video editing with the games that I've covered in and around the area. Because there'll be times I get back at 12 and part of me will say, oh, I just want to go to sleep because I got to get up and go to work in the morning. But then there's a part of me that says, you know what? Let's see if we can push through this, get this out.
Yeah.
And then I could post it in the morning, because if I don't get this video thing done, I'm going to forget all about it.
Yeah. And like you said, having the opportunity to get that done, that last little bit right before you go to sleep, first of all, there's a sense of accomplishment of like, yes, I got that done. I feel good about it. And then I really think it kind of sets you up for the next morning. You kind of wake up rejuvenated because like there's like an excitement of, oh, I get to post that. And like, in a sense, it's almost just like a turbo boost for the day, like right from the get-go. Because like you can just start rolling right now. And there's something special to that.
Absolutely. And as you were coming up through, let's say, the early 2000s, who were some of the best athletes that you've seen during your time covering high school games?
That's a great question. And the thing, Portage County has been blessed with so many great athletes. There's a lot of counties across the entire state. I mean, there's just great kids that come up through. Some of my favorites would definitely be Eric Sheely. He played basketball at Waterloo High School and graduated in 2006. His senior season, he averaged 40 points per game, and it was just a whirlwind of a season in which he scored 60-plus points multiple times, hit 14 three-pointers in a single game. I mean, it was just it's almost hard to explain the whirlwind and the phenomenon that it really kind of became inside the county. I mean, toward the end, well, really kind of the middle toward the end of that season, games were selling out at like 4:30 in the afternoon. It was just insane. He was just super, super fun to watch. And part of what was so fun to watch him play was that, by about 5 or 6 games into that season, he was averaging 40 points per game then. And everyone kind of then understood. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about like his opposition. The teams came in knowing what they had to do to try and beat Waterloo that season. They had to double and triple team him. And yet, even while they were still doing that, he was still hitting at a high percentage on his shots. There was no stopping him. It was just amazing. So I would definitely place him up toward the top. I would place Bridget Franick up toward the top as well. Bridget Franick ran cross country and track and field for Crestwood High School, and she graduated in 2006 as well. So kind of same year as Eric Sheely at Waterloo. But Bridget went on to become a national champion at Penn State University in the steeplechase run. And she also made the London Olympics in 2012. So she was just a phenomenal, powerful runner. And her senior season for the track and field state championship, she won 3 state championships that just in that one year, which really kind of helped power Crestwood to a team state championship that year as well. And they had other great runners too. Cassandra Shank was another great runner that ran alongside Bridget and a few other nice runners. But Bridget really was kind of the superstar of that group. And I think that kind of played out. Obviously becoming an Olympian is amazing accomplishment. And I would say I'm trying to dance around some of the different sports so I can try and hit a lot of the different sports. Marcus Sanders for Ravenna football, just a tremendous power and speed combination runner that with incredible vision, really just an incredible player to watch play football. He graduated in 2000. And other than that, I mean, there's just been a number of super, super great athletes that come close to that same tier, but not quite the tier that those three do. Kim Kreiner at Mogador, another Olympian. Now, I never actually got the chance to cover her because she graduated, I believe, in either 96 or 97. But that was about the same time that my sister was in athletics at Ritztown as well. So they were kind of competing against each other during that time frame. And Kim Kreiner, who now is a coach for the Mogador track team, she's a two-time Olympian in the javelin throw. So she was another just phenomenal athlete to come through Portage County.
Wow. And I know you worked there for quite a bit, and you've worked there for quite a bit until 2018. What would you say are some of your most favorite or memorable games that you've gotten to cover during your time at Record Courier?
Okay, so there's definitely a few that stand out. And I always kind of feel like when they stand out after all these years, that definitely places them in the important category in my brain, regardless if they're for a league championship or not. I remember a boys basketball game back in 2003, and it was a regular season game. It wasn't with any title on the line or anything like that, but it was a Ritztown boys basketball game at Field. And Ritztown built, it was a big lead, 25 plus, and I think it was 28. And it was a third quarter, 28-point third quarter lead. And Field rallied all the way back to win that game. And I remember the back of my stat sheet, the notes where I was doing my shorthand notes and stuff, was just, it was almost unreadable because I was writing so fast. And I remember one of the players from Field, his parents were sitting next to me or whatever, and during one of the timeouts, I must have smoke must have been coming off my pen and the paper because I was writing so fast, because I finally looked up and they were like staring right at me. They're like, "Did you get all that?" Like, kind of poking fun at me a little bit. But it was just a sign of like they realized that there was so much for me to track down as I was trying to keep track of that game. So that game stands out. I've covered Mogador football a number of times in the regional semis and the state semis and regional finals and on down the whole tourney trail. Those are always memorable experiences because of the gravity of what's on the line. I was fortunate enough to cover the Wyndham boys basketball team when they made a state semifinal run in 2006, and just a phenomenal team, very unselfish team. So I would say their entire tournament run was memorable for me because every single game they played was just such a pure style of basketball that was just so fun to watch. And I would also say any of the state track and field state championships that I've been able to cover, just an electric environment, and there's really no way to recreate that. And you just kind of walk into Jesse Owens Memorial Stadium and you just feel the energy, and you're just not human if you don't feel that energy and get excited by it. And so I would definitely classify all of those toward the top, whether my coverage area was fortunate enough to get a state champion that year or not. Those always make it more special, but for me, just being in that environment, I just love it.
That's incredible, because Portage County has produced a lot of amazing athletes. And looking at the Portage Sports website, you definitely see some of the stats there. And I'm recently of the Portage County area because I grew up in Northeast Ohio, so Ravenna is a little new to me. So that's something I'm definitely going to look into more, and really appreciate how you've taken the time to look through all the record books and all the old teams and stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah, the history portion of my company's site, Portage Sports, it was something I knew from the very, very get-go that once Portage Sports actually launched, that there was going to be a history page to go with it, because first of all, it's just an enjoyment for me to keep track of that stuff. And it's an enjoyment, I think, for a lot of people, but there was no really central database for a lot of that stuff to exist somewhere. And what was maybe once hearsay about what someone did in their past or during their career may have been 100% accurate, or it could have just been hearsay or kind of grown into more of a tall tale as time went on. And so having that history page there really is, first of all, it's helpful for me as a reference point when I go to write a story, because, if something magnificent happens, I immediately have a database that I can pull from to put it into a historical context. So it kind of helps place the story of him kind of on the ladder of importance, knowing that I can use that information as a point of reference. And it's always been surprising to me how many high schools do not keep more of a more detailed history of statistics and school records, and coaches come and coaches go for a variety of reasons. And no disrespect for when that happens, but it's like sometimes coaches will go and information for that particular year never get turned in. And next thing you know, 20, 30 years goes by, and you might have had someone on that team that fits somewhere in the historical context of Portage County sports, but yet no one knows about it because none of the stats were turned in.
Yeah. And it's definitely with this day and age, sometimes when I'm tweeting updates about a game, there's like hardly anyone. It's like there's like not a lot of social media stuff about the teams, because they could play and then you don't really find out a lot about it, because there are some really talented kids on some of these teams, and there's like, with no updates, it's like no one really knows a game happens.
Right. Yeah. And, that's kind of where guys like you and I and women as well step in to fill that void. And while we're all just one person, you just spotlight as many things as you possibly can through the course of the day, through the course of the week. And you just kind of build it out and just shine the spotlight on those kids as much as you possibly can.
Yep. And what led you to start PortageSports.com?
So for me, I resigned from the Record Courier in 2018, but remained on staff as a columnist and game coverage and consultant through 2022. And then for me, I was kind of a part-time person at that point. So it was 2018, I resigned as sports editor, then was part-time through 2022. And for me, Portage Sports was really something that just kind of fell onto my heart after being away from the media industry and Portage County sports specifically. Being away from it full time, I started to realize maybe how much I did truly miss it. I chased a business opportunity, which was a great opportunity, and was very thankful to the company that gave it to me. But like I said, I just kind of started to realize that, I just kind of missed that day in, day out sports, and started to think about the idea of creating kind of my own platform to present that news to. And that really is what sparked Portage Sports. It wasn't necessarily that I was unhappy with the Record Courier, because that wasn't it. That wasn't the case at all. They treated me phenomenal from the day I started there to the day I resigned. It was just a matter of creating something of my own. I guess I kind of got to a certain age in my life where I just thought to myself, let me see if I can create something on my own and present it on a platform that people will respond to. So maybe a sense of challenge existed there for me to want to do it. I think ultimately it was just an idea for me to get back into sports full time and spotlight the student athletes in the schools that I've enjoyed and been so passionate about for so long.
Respect. And that was also, we both did the Ravenna game this year. Was one of my favorite memories from this past year, where Ravenna won their first basketball championship.
Yes.
Night since 1979. It was you, your daughter took pics.
Yep.
Myself, Jonah. We were all there to witness history.
That was a super, super special night. And that will be a night that I'll never forget. I know, and trust me, we all enter unbiased, and we will tell the story as it unfolds. That night, I will never forget that, because that night, because it just was you could feel the emotion that those coaches and the parents and the players, you couldn't help but kind of become a Raven fan that night. It's just, we're all human beings. And while I was prepared to tell the unbiased story as it unfolded, by the end of it, being a human being, you just felt happy for them. And, they played Woodridge, and if Woodridge would have won that game, we would have been happy to tell a Woodridge story, and that would have been fine. But man, what a special night for that Ravenna community. I mean, that was a game that really captured decades long of not winning a championship. I mean, that time absence of a title, it magnifies what they accomplished. And that was such a fun night to be there and just see the smiles, the tears, the hugs, the embraces. I mean, it was just everything about that game, especially afterwards, after the result had happened. You almost spent the next 30 minutes just watching all the reaction, and you almost forgot a game was played.
Absolutely. And just being able to get video from that. And that's one of the big things about the social media era, getting video highlights of that and the students storming the court. That's something that they'll remember for the rest of their lives, like moments like that.
Yeah. And they get to own those the rest of their lives. And that's what kind of makes sports so special, is you work so hard to accomplish something, and you try and do it with a collection of, in basketball for varsity, you might have a roster of 10 to 12. So you got 10 or 12 different boys on that team, all from different, areas of the community and different backgrounds and all these different things. And you're all fighting as brothers toward one goal. And, if that sounds dramatic, well, guess what? It's because it is. That's what makes it so special.
Absolutely. And what would you say has been your most favorite part about covering sports in Portage County? What is it that sets Portage County apart from the rest of Ohio?
I think for me, and just speaking personally, is the fact that I grew up here. And so all these schools are the schools that I grew up playing against, and all these families that I've gotten to know after all these years. It feels like every game that I go to is the game 7 of the NBA Finals or the World Series or whatever. I mean, that's the excitement level that I go into it with. And so for me, it's that connection to a county that raised me in a sense. And now I get to kind of pay it forward and write these stories about these kids and these families that have been always so close to me all this time. So would I be able to write a nice, passionate story about 2 high schools playing against each other in North Dakota or New York, or you pick your state and your city? Yeah, I'm sure I would, because writing is ultimately my passion. But for me, I always kind of feel like I get the opportunity to have a whole different perspective. Growing up here has allowed me to not only have a historical context for things, because I've seen so many things happen, but it just allows me that personal touch with these families, because I've known them for so long. So that's what makes it special to me, knowing that I'm going to go to a game and see a handful of some of my closest friends that really, those friendships were blossomed through sports, through coaching together, and through writing stories week after week about their community. There's a trust factor that they've presented to me, and an obligation that I feel to uphold that trust with them. And so that relationship just grows stronger year in and year out. And it just makes every single year like the next best year of my life.
That's amazing. And last question for you. Where do you see Portage sports going in the future?
I expect, since it launched, so it launched August 1st. So at this point, not even a year old, but approaching the first birthday of Portage sports. The response since day one has really kind of been a bit overwhelming in a positive way, which it was such a blessing for me to have people respond to it as quickly as they did. And I had the benefit, I guess, of having an audience that had been built over 22 years. So when I presented it as kind of my new platform where my content was going to land, it was really just a matter of people supporting something that they were already supporting, but just kind of clicking on a new link, if that makes sense. And so for me, where do I see it moving forward? I see it I see it continuing to grow because that's what the trend has shown since day one. So for starters, I see it not slowing down, but speeding up. I see it growing in staff size. I see it growing in content creation. So like right now, the vast majority of what I've put together content wise has been mostly written form and a little bit of video and a little bit of photo stuff. But for the most part, there's just still so much room for it to grow. But through year one, being a one-man band, I can only be stretched so thin, right? And there's things that I still want to do, but I want to make sure that when I do them, I introduce them and they're done the right way so that once they land, the sky's the limit for them. So podcast is certainly in kind of on the radar a little bit. More video content would be a tremendous addition to the site. So there's really nothing that's not on the table. And I know that's kind of a vague way to answer your question, but for me, it's just a matter of attacking every single day to present a whole new day's worth of content for readers and just continuing to grow that audience, which since day one has been happening. So I kind of feel like if I'm providing something for people that want to be there, I'm going to keep going down that path.
Absolutely, Tom. And thank you for coming on to do an interview tonight. And where can people find your work at?
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate you asking me to be on, Tony. It's been really fun to get to know you over all these years and everything. And I just feel very blessed that you thought to ask me to come on. And so I happily accepted your invitation. So thank you for that. First of all my work can be found across a couple different things. Of course, the main site is portagesports.com. And then there's obviously some socials that complement that as well. So I'm on Twitter at Tom_Nader. And then there's a Facebook page for it as well for Portage Sports, which is Portage Sports News off of Facebook. So anything you search up for Portage Sports should return my content there. And I welcome anybody to check it out. And I always try and make myself as available as possible, whether it's being through an email or direct message or whatever. So anybody who visits the site and sees something that they wish could be done better or story tips, all that stuff, I'm an approachable guy. I welcome everything.
Tom, it's an honor getting to interview you, and thank you for coming on and doing an interview. And for those of you that are on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And Tapped In with Tony's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever available. So thank you guys for listening.
All right, Tony, thank you so much. I appreciate it.